Hello, everybody. On behalf of the ISTAT Foundation, it is my great pleasure as Chair of the Humanitarian Committee and an ISTAT Foundation trustee to welcome you to this conversation with the ISTAT Foundation Humanitarian Aid Programme recipient, Airlink. Airlink is a longtime partner of the ISTAT Foundation, and I wanted to introduce Bob Crandall, who is the former president of American Airlines, and Steve Smith, who is the president of Airlink. Welcome, gentlemen. By way of—
Good morning, Richie. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, great, thanks. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you. So listen, by way of background, just to introduce you both, Bob, the former president of American Airlines, has a long and distinguished career, a tremendous resume. Bob is accredited, having kind of joined American Airlines and come in and out of the aviation industry. He's credited at creating the first major airline frequent flyer reward program, AA Advantage, as well as pioneering the modern reservation system through the creation of Sabre. He's also credited with pioneering yield management, and also famously advised American Airlines staff not to invest in airlines in 2006. So interesting kind of background there. So welcome, Bob. You're very welcome to this conversation. Steve, background coming into aviation through Rolls-Royce, took over the presidency and CEO of Airlink in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. Since then has grown the organization by 20-fold and has made it a tremendous success. Airlink is obviously a longtime partner of the ISTAT Foundation, and we're delighted to have that partnership. And Airlink gives tremendous resources to lots and lots of different organizations across the globe. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for taking part in this, and we look forward to hearing what you both have to say. So, gentlemen, take it from here.
Well, Steve, I'm not quite sure what the point we want to make here. I think what we want to impress on the people that have joined the program is the great success that Airlink has created, that you've helped create for Airlink. It was more than 10 years ago when I first got involved with Airlink, shortly after it got underway in 2008, 2009, as a way of facilitating the support that the airline industry generally has provided in response to disasters around the world. And in the beginning, I was a little, I had some questions in my mind as to why did we need Airlink? And I think over time, it's become quite clear that Airlink plays a couple of roles. Number one, because it's partially funded by ISTAT, or is funded by ISTAT in some fairly substantial ways, is money that flows into the NGO community to help offset the cost of these dreadful disasters. And then secondly, although the airline industry has for many, many years provided very substantial support to some of the larger NGOs, I think what Airlink has done is it has facilitated the use of airline and industry resources by the smaller NGOs, some of whom are not sufficiently sophisticated to have their own linkages with the airlines. So I think you guys have played a very useful role in facilitating the use of airline and industry resources by a wider range of NGOs. So you've done a hell of a good job, it seems to me. And I suppose why don't you fill in the people on the show on some of the highlights of that? And you might also tell them that in addition to everything else, this guy apparently hits a golf ball about 1.5 miles and represents ISTAT in golf tournaments from time to time. So it's, it's not a bad deal. You spend some time working and then you spend some time playing golf.
That's right. It's a tough life. Well, thanks so much, Bob, and thanks so much, Richie, and the ISTAT Foundation for hosting us. Bob, just my thanks to you for all of your support and for yeah, I mean 10 years or more. You've been helping us and supporting us on our advisory council, and now on our governor's council, and I know it's a volunteer unpaid role, and during our hard negotiation for you to come on and talk to me today, I know the only thing you really wanted was me to wear a tie. So I've I've managed that with all of my achievements. No, it's great, and it's great to see you. So, I mean, as you just said, I mean, Airlink really was founded by the ISTAT Foundation. We wouldn't exist without ISTAT. And it was really this operational framework for NGOs and airlines to work together. And, one of the things I always find interesting, in terms of the context of the sort of environment in which Airlink operates, which is the humanitarian sector, is that, anytime you hear an appeal or anytime you see a commercial on television showing, some sad situation that please donate to help these individuals or people, 80% of that funding, 80% of that money goes to some area of the supply chain. And, we can see in the news recently, because we're having so many different problems with supply chain, that it's a really topical thing. It's always been pretty topical for us and for the humanitarian sector. And it's really important to support that. And I think that was the foresight that the folks at the ISTAT Foundation had. And, and the other thing is that, I'm throwing out some stats here, but 60% of the aid that arrives in early days is often the wrong aid. Might not be totally the wrong aid, but wrong at that time. And so it's really important to make sure that that's coordinated. And so I think that, the role that Airlink plays initially as simple as let's match up NGOs, their needs with capacity of the carriers. It has really evolved, and now it's really, let's understand what's happening in the disaster situation. Let's help inform our partners, whether it's airlines, whether it's nonprofits. So we'll tell the airlines what's happening, what is the NGO humanitarian response community doing. We'll tell the NGOs, okay, this is what the logistics environment looks like, the runways, what the damages are like. And then also the donors and funders and our supporters as to how they can get involved and help. And then the next step is operationalizing all of that and bringing all of those elements together to be able to send aid efficiently, quickly, and at as low cost as possible. The last element is then we need to go back and make sure, okay, did we do what we said we were going to go do in terms of our partners and their impact on the ground? And so that's kind of the role that Airlink's now playing. And but it's challenging. It's humanitarian sector, and logistics is tremendously underfunded. Arguably, perhaps for those that are outside of logistics, is perhaps not the most exciting sector, but really important. And I think Airlink also plays a role to make sure it's not just about launching one plane of supplies. It's about a sustained effort to support the communities that have been affected. And so I think that, when we look and talk to our partners, it's really on multiple levels. Yes, it's the cost savings, but it's also scaling of responses. There are many NGOs we work with that would not be able to send as many people or as much supply as they could without our support. Listen, for a long time now, the humanitarian sector has and continues to be a very fragmented sector. And so, by taking a lead on that critical element of supply chain, the logistics side, we can help bring those organizations together. And I think the last thing I would say is that, we're absolutely and excited to be a good news story for the industry, because it has its significant amounts of knocks in the media and what you will. But this is a highly competitive environment, but not when it comes to humanitarian aid. That's not the purpose, and it's really been tremendous as to how much support we get.
Yep, it's a good story.
Yeah.
Why don't you, there must have been one or more circumstances, Steve, where you noted that it's really not about one plane or a one day, or it's a sort of a sustained program. And there must have been a couple of times when you had a very sustained program that went on for some period of time and had a profound impact. So why don't you tell the group about one or more of those things?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, you know what, the one that comes to mind is very close to us, was when Hurricane Dorian went through and hit the Bahamas. You know, there was a lot of need to go in there, and the need for sustained flights. And not only did we send a couple of flights down using partner carriers, but we also forged a relationship with one of the local carriers, or Bahamas Air, whereby we facilitated all transportation. I can't remember what it was now, maybe for a period of something like 6 months, so that the NGOs, because the NGOs, they're not just, you know, going to go there and stay forever. They're going to rotate people in and out. I mean, this is a high burnout environment, and so there was a need to keep cycling people in and out on flights. You know, after a while, the cargo need goes down, so there wasn't so much cargo need. But this is an ability, and you know, I think we stayed in there for perhaps 18 months supporting those programs. You know, it's what does it stay in the media for, maybe, you know, 5 to 10 days, but it's not sold after 5 to 10 days, and so you know, that's a very challenging thing. So it's important that we, you know, we're obviously raise those resources and funding and what you will to support sustained programs. I think the other thing I would mention is India. You know, we all remember how bad you know, the COVID was within India, and the fact that we were able to you know, rally so much support from so many on this call, from within you know, ISTAT and members, was really tremendous. We had some tremendous grants and matching grants that really helped us not only send multiple flights, you know, hundreds, thousands of tons of or hundreds of tons of supplies, but we were able to do that over a sustained period. And India, a very complex place to get to, and so but fortunately, you know, we've done this before. We've become experts in what we do now, and so we were able to navigate all of those challenges in terms of logistics.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, it's a really outstanding story, both for you and the foundation, and for the airlines themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I would say that, you know, now as we look to, you know, as sort of, you know, where we look as in terms of the future, you know, what we're really focused on is, arguably, the first responders are the people on the ground that have been affected by disasters, right? They're the ones that have to pick up their homes and what you will. And so, you know, as we've always had a focus on, you know, on focusing on the individuals in which we sort of ultimately serve, even though that's through empowering our partners. But as we continue to develop our relationships with the organizations on the ground around the world on a regional basis, that's going to be a big focus for Airlink going forward. And you know, I think in terms of you know, our approach, you know, there's a big focus and a big dialogue on climate and on socially responsible programs and ESG and all those different things. And I think that you know, these are all important things, and you know, I think we're a good partner in that sense, because not necessarily that we're doing anything differently. We were always taking that approach. We're already using existing capacity. Yes, we will get involved in chartering an aircraft if we really need to, but that's very expensive, and that's sort of the exception, not the rule. We did that in Nepal, just after while the COVID spike was in India. All of a sudden, it moved to Nepal, and so but you know, that's a short runway, hot, high location. And so that's difficult because you can only get certain size aircraft in there. And, you know, the typical where you can have road transportation, that's, you know, getting to that place on roads that have been affected by other disasters is not feasible sometimes. And so we were able to support and send an aircraft in there. But I think, in terms of, our approach going forward for ESG, for example, we're using existing networks. We do see ourselves as a way for organizations to support us as we support the impacts of climate change, right? As people are affected by disasters, we're able to send in aid and support. And I think at the same time, while the industry has got a big challenge ahead of it to become carbon neutral by a number of years down the road, and so I think that's really important. That initiative that we're engaged in here.
Tremendous. You've obviously got a lot of reach, Steve. You've touched on a whole variety of ways, places that you have reached into, and activities you've done. How big an organization have you got these days?
Yeah, so when I joined, we're talking about how long. When I joined, we were one person. That was me. We're now still small, but we're a dozen people, and we'll be expanding to a few more people. We're even looking to have an individual based in one of our target regions, in order to, because one of the biggest challenges we have is operating over time zones, right? Like everybody. And our team, not all based in DC, but primarily based in Washington DC. That's very difficult to handle things in Asia, especially if you're managing things that are going from somewhere in Asia, medical manufacturers, to somewhere else, the Philippines or somewhere else. That's very challenging to handle that. So that's a development area for us. And I think that, but we've got some great partners. We've had for many years now. United Airlines has been a big partner of ours. Qatar Airways become a big partner for us, especially around with cargo movement, and United too, actually, with cargo. But tremendous connectivity through Doha. The Beirut explosion that was what was it, last year or the year before? They were great connectivity to help us launch multiple flights into Lebanon, and of course, we have so many tremendous supporters from within the ISTAT community. We're talking Air Castle, GE Aviation, ISTAT itself, Alton Aviation, Altair, BOC Aviation, lots of organizations, and I think a couple of other key airline partners that have really stepped up are the Atlas Group, and Air Canada and Alaska, and so they've been really great partners for some time now.
Good. Well, I sure the desire to be part of aviation seems to be unquenchable.
That's right.
We had lots of new airlines that started immediately after deregulation years ago, and it seems like every time I open the newspaper these days, there's a new low-cost carrier that's starting somewhere. I think a lot of these guys have forgotten the old adage: if you want to become a millionaire in the airline business, start with $1 billion. But anyway, for all of the financial difficulty the industry has had, it continues to find a way to help out in these dire circumstances, and the world seems to be awash in those. So more power to you and your organization.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it has been really amazing. I mean, unfortunately, the demand is sort of a growth sector. Things seem to be getting worse around the world, and for many years, if ever, the humanitarian sector and all the funding that goes to it can't keep up, and never will. And so I think that system, I don't know, is fundamentally broken, but needs different ways to approach it. And so the fact of using the private sector, there's always, we don't work with them, but there's always an example that people would throw out that hey, all these individuals in this certain location are starving and short of meals, but hey, guess what? You go in the store, there's always a bottle of Coke on the shelf. And so you're like, well, so the idea was, well, how do we partner with Coke or something within their logistics supply chain to get the stuff there too. Not that simple, of course.
Sure.
But but airlines have a very unique capability that is tremendously powerful, and the aviation sector, and so it's exciting to be able to use that to support. Yeah.
Good. Well, I don't know. Is there anybody on this call that wants to ask Steve a question? Like it seems like you've pretty much quelled the curiosity, my friend.
That's right. Well, I don't know if other people are unmuted to actually speak. Actually, so if there's any questions, please put them into the chat area. And I guess that just while we're waiting, I mean, maybe we can talk about ways that people can help. The organization is, I think that first off, I'm sure that everyone gets more than enough messages from us of the great things we're doing, and at a minimum, please just help share the message, right? In terms of help us build our following. Airlink, for all the great things and stats we profess, none of it would actually exist without any of you without many of you on the phone. ISTAT Foundation board, the individuals that had the foresight to develop Airlink in the first place. All of you on the call, I'm sure, would be familiar with Bob Brown, who was a strong and continues to be an important leader and advocate for the organization. And so all the things that we're able to do, all the support, all the funding, we might think we're hot stuff in terms of the organization, but it all comes really from you guys, and so help us share our message.
Steve,
yeah,
I'm going to get the last name wrong.
Oh yeah,
Peter Hubbers, is that the right name?
That's right.
Posted a question having to do with where are you going over the next few years, and how do you get there? So why don't you respond to that question?
Oh sure, yeah. So I mean, I think where are we going over the next few years? I think as the idea is to, as I said, the first responders in all of these humanitarian situations are those people on the ground, right, that are most directly affected. And so the objective is to get as close as possible to those individuals, to the organizations on the ground. I think the humanitarian sector has changed. It's not all about, hey, let's all go flying and save the day, right? Airlift will always be a critical component of a major international response. Our focus is to make it as customized, as focused as possible to the needs on the ground. And so that means building more relationships with the local NGOs. That means building more and deeper relationships with the carriers in each of the regions. That means building our funding resources to be able to go respond, because even as you see, we talk about all of the generosity of the airline sector and the aviation sector, and that's all true. At some point, we need to be able to sometimes just solve problems and be able to purchase airlift and make sure things get there. And so we also do that because, you talk to any humanitarian logisticians and they say, well, what's more valuable? Is it that it's free flight, or is it that it gets there? And of course, you can imagine it's like, we need to make sure it gets there. And so there's a balance there. But in terms of the future, yes, growing the team, becoming more, we already are global, we respond global, but perhaps our global footprint, our, getting closer to carriers, and I think really making sure we're understanding and becoming more efficient at responding around the world, because as I said, there's just so much need that continues to increase. I think there was a UN report come out recently that a couple of years pre-pandemic, we were 1 in 44 people in need of humanitarian assistance. Now we're at 1 in 33. So it's not a good looking trend.
No, that's right. And you've touched a couple of times on the probability that climate change is going to continue to make things worse.
Yeah.
So who knows? Based on a story in the New York Times the other day, said in the next few years you're going to see a couple of feet of rise in sea levels on the east coast of the United States. I mean, those of us in Rhode Island may need your help pretty soon.
That's right. That's right.
Let us hope not.
That's right. Well, that's great. Well, unless there's any other questions,
Well, no, that Julian wants to know what you're
Yeah.
doing about Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is a major problem. We've got lots of people there that supported the United States for many years, and they're still stuck there.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not there's anything to be done, given the active opposition being mounted by the Taliban, I'm not sure. What are you active in Afghanistan, and if so, how?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. Good question. So, just a point of clarification, and I know you know this, but just for everyone on the call, within Airlink's mandate, we're never going to get involved in extracting people from one place to another. All right, we're not qualified or set up to go do that. And so, in terms of extracting people, but the community that's there, that's that I think it's been referenced as the fastest, biggest, perhaps the world's most concerning humanitarian crisis that's ongoing. Yes, we will support that. And as we speak, actually, no, not as we speak, as we spoke 3 days ago, we supported a first airlift flight into Kabul. It's still probably not something we can talk about too much, right, because of the security concerns. But it was with one of our NGO partners. They have a number of mobile medical clinics going around helping others. This was a plane of, I want to say it was quite a lot. It was over 100 pallets of medical supplies, so big one. And so this is to support those mobile medical clinics. And so they will be able to, I think, triple the amount of mobile medical clinics that are going around. So it goes from 10 to, I think, 30. And these are pods of 3 to 5 people, doctors, nurses, whatever else, security that would go around and help others. And so, we're pretty proud to be able to support that. It's what a mess that, the country's in. And but difficult because of the security concerns. Again, we may not be able to talk about it too much. I'm okay to talk about it on this call, but I'm also not giving over too many details, right? But that's one that we've felt quite passionately about for some time, because that's a real bad situation there. A lot of people have a tough time.
It's a very, very sad situation.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, this has been instructive. I've learned a lot. You brought me up to date. I hope the others that have been on the call feel similarly. I think you guys are doing a very good job. And I think, according to the program at this point, I'm supposed to hand it back to Richie at ISTAT headquarters, and they're going to go forward with the rest of this. Thanks very much. I enjoyed it. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Richie.
No problem. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Bob, for moderating that. I think, certainly from my point of view, Steve's kind of comments about the logistical issues in our day-to-day work in aircraft leasing, we see that all the time. I can only imagine how difficult it is on the humanitarian side trying to move aid around the place. It is a good news story for the industry. It is fabulous to kind of hear this. For the people online or the people who will watch this as a recording, I would encourage you to support Airlink where you can, either with corporate considerations or any individual giving dollars that you may have access to. From our perspective in the humanitarian side of the ISTAT Foundation, it's a long-term partner for us, and we're very happy to support them. So thank you very much, guys. What I'd like to do now is just for a few minutes give you a little bit of background on the foundation, and particularly the humanitarian side of it. And what we do is just kind of discuss some points as we go through. So this was really all about Airlink, and Airlink, as many people may know, was founded out of the ISTAT Foundation in 2010. And it subsequently evolved, and as Steve said, he took over the running of Airlink in 2013. So we have actually kept a very, very close relationship with them over the years. And since then, the humanitarian committee itself was founded in 2013 and runs with a group of individuals from within ISTAT. I think a couple of notable things to mention in terms of COVID-19, which is still quite topical for a lot of us around the world. Between 2020 and 2021, with the support of ISTAT, the ISTAT Foundation has given over $600,000 in COVID-19 relief to numerous humanitarian organizations across the globe. And in fact, 2020 was a record-breaking year for the foundation, and the total foundation givings on various different aspects of humanitarianism reached $1.4 million. So these are really important kind of points to mention. The cumulative disbursements in relation to humanitarian issues to date from 2010 to last year were $3.1 million, of which kind of 1.9 million was provided along the way prior to Airlink separating away from ISTAT and becoming a partner. There was $1.9 million went in. Additionally, $710,000 went to various charities across the globe through our annual giving program. And I just note that that program is actually now open. And so we will be looking for our next group of partners for that for 2022. And in addition, as mentioned kind of earlier, kind of as part of the COVID-19 relief, $500,000 was routed to specific charities in the spring of 2020. This was a very interesting program to be part of because it was a very quick disbursement and getting the money to the front line where it was needed very quickly. Just some current initiatives that we're involved in. The committee on the humanitarian side is comprised of a group of dedicated ISTAT members. As Steve would have mentioned earlier, you know, this side of the aviation industry is all based on volunteers. And while we're only a drop in the ocean compared to the scale of some of other organizations, we're very dependent on the members of the committee to make a difference. So I'd like to thank them. In the committee, we have evolving goals. I think one of the things we'll be prioritizing is diversity and inclusion. This runs all the way through ISTAT and the ISTAT Foundation, and is something we'll be focusing on over the coming years. The giving itself, in terms of our annual giving policy, is focused on charities with an aviation focus. We particularly are encouraged by areas of disadvantaged and underdeveloped regions of the world. And developed regions where there is a specific or acute need is also part of our target audience. And where those can actually have an ESG type consideration would be beneficial as part of any application to us. We tend to focus on smaller charities because our level of giving is smaller. So being able to give $10,000 to a small charity where we can actually make a real difference is very important from our point of view in how we select some of our partners. And having a positive impact on diversity and inclusion, as I mentioned, is really, really positive from our point of view. On average in a year, we get more than 50 applicants. Some or all may meet the criteria in terms of the application process. On average, we would select about 15 of those applicants, or maybe 30% or a third of the applications, to actually be part of our giving every year. Some of these are repeat visitors or partners with us, and some are new applicants. So we will look at each on a case-by-case basis and the merits of each case. So some notable achievements of our partnership with Airlink. We have an enduring relationship with nearly $2 million worth of giving from the ISTAT Foundation. Since 2019, we've also had additional focus on various different aspects. And I think Steve mentioned a number of these earlier, particularly the Beirut response after the explosion in Beirut and India following the COVID-19. Additionally, we supported some last mile support following Hurricane Ida in Mozambique in 2019. And that was a very important milestone from our point of view, as it kind of changed some of the focus of what we were actually doing. Looking ahead, our external environment has changed. There's absolutely no doubt about that. While we, as part of ISTAT, we are focused on trying to funnel some of ISTAT's revenue into giving programs. I can only imagine how difficult it is on the outside in terms of charities that depend on support. And this has changed, and it's got more difficult over time. The operating environment that we faced within ISTAT and the ISTAT Foundation during COVID-19 has changed, with reduced revenue and a different focus. However, with all thanks to the foundation and the big board of ISTAT, we were well supported during that time, and hopefully we actually made them proud. There are a lot of constraints on the various different opportunities to focus and reaction on various different aspects of what we're doing, and our annual giving is challenging, and the impact on our targets of giving is really, really important from our point of view. So really what I wanted to do is just to kind of round up and to thank Steve and to thank Bob for what was a fabulous chat. I learned an awful lot about Airlink and how it's actually supported. It was a pleasure listening to both of them. And I'd just like to thank everyone again for being part of this. So thank you very much indeed. And I wish you all the best.